This story is titled, My Friend Lied About Being Homeless to Move in Rent-Free, so I Kicked Her Out and Exposed the Truth. Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm 29 years old. I live in a cozy two-bedroom apartment in the suburbs of Chicago. I work full-time as a graphic designer, and while I'm not exactly swimming in luxury, I've worked hard to create a stable life for myself. I've always believed in helping others when I can. It's just the way I was raised. But sometimes, that kindness gets taken advantage of. And this is one of those times. It all started when my longtime friend, Katie, reached out to me out of the blue. Katie and I had been close in college, but after graduation, life took us in different directions. She had moved to another state, and while we stayed in touch here and there, we weren't as close as we used to be. Still, I always thought of her as a good friend, someone I could count on if I ever needed her, and vice versa. When I got her call, I could tell something was wrong. Her voice was shaky, and she sounded desperate. She told me she had fallen on hard times. She had lost her job, her apartment, and to make matters worse, her car had broken down. She said she was essentially homeless, bouncing between friends' couches and struggling to make ends meet. My heart broke for her. Katie wasn't just any friend. She was someone I had once considered family. I couldn't imagine her going through something like this alone. Without thinking twice, I told her she could come stay with me for a while until she got back on her feet. At first, she was hesitant. She said she didn't want to impose or be a burden, but I insisted. I told her I had the space, and that I couldn't bear the thought of her struggling like that. It wasn't just about giving her a place to stay. It was about being there for someone I cared about when they needed me most. Within a week, Katie arrived at my apartment with a couple of suitcases and a story that made my heart ache. She told me she had been evicted after losing her job and that her car breaking down had been the final straw. She couldn't keep up with repairs, rent, or anything else, and it all spiraled out of control. I didn't press her for too many details. I didn't want to make her feel worse. Instead, I focused on making her feel welcome. I told her she didn't have to worry about paying rent right away and that she could take her time finding a job and getting back on track. I figured she'd need a few months to get things in order, and I was okay with that. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. Katie was incredibly grateful, always thanking me for letting her stay and promising to contribute as soon as she could. She cooked dinner a few nights, helped tidy up around the apartment, and seemed genuinely determined to get back on her feet. But as time went on, I started noticing some things that didn't quite add up. For someone who claimed to be broke and homeless, Katie always seemed to have money for little luxuries. She'd come back to the apartment with bags of takeout, new clothes, and even a fancy new pair of headphones. I tried to brush it off at first. Maybe she had saved a little money before everything fell apart, or maybe she was treating herself to small things to keep her spirits up. Still, it nagged at me. How was she affording all of this when she supposedly had no job and no savings? Then there was the fact that Katie didn't seem to be making much of an effort to find work. She spent most of her days lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, or binge-watching TV shows. Whenever I asked if she'd had any luck with job applications, she'd shrug and say something vague like, "I'm working on it." At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I told myself that finding a job could be overwhelming, and that maybe she just needed some time to adjust. But as weeks turned into months, my patience started wearing thin. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Katie sitting in the living room with a pizza box and a shopping bag from an expensive clothing store. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "How was your day?" "Good," she replied, her eyes glued to the TV. I sat down across from her, feeling a mix of frustration and confusion. "Have you heard back from any of the jobs you applied to?" She glanced at me, her expression nonchalant. "Not yet. It's a tough market out there." Her response felt like a brush-off, and I couldn't help but feel like something was off. How could she be so relaxed when her situation was supposedly so dire? That night, I decided to dig a little deeper. I hated the idea of snooping, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Katie wasn't being completely honest with me. I started paying closer attention to her behavior, her spending habits, and the little inconsistencies in her story. It didn't take long for the truth to come to light, and when it did, I was floored. The truth unraveled slowly, but once I started connecting the dots, everything became painfully clear. Katie wasn't homeless, not even close. In fact, she had never been evicted from her apartment or lost her job. One night, while Katie was out running errands, I noticed she had left her laptop open on the coffee table. I wasn't proud of it, but curiosity and suspicion got the better of me. I hesitated for a moment, battling with my conscience, before glancing at the screen. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. Her email was open, and there, in plain sight, were messages between her and her landlord about renewing her lease. The dates didn't add up to her story. She hadn't been evicted at all. She was still renting her apartment. I scrolled further, my heart pounding with every click. That's when I found the real kicker, an email from her boss confirming her pay raise. Not only did she still have a job, but she was making more money than before. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. How could someone I considered a close friend lie to my face like this? How could she take advantage of my kindness, knowing full well the sacrifices I was making to help her? The next day, I decided to confront her. When she came back from her so-called errands, I was waiting for her in the living room. She walked in with a shopping bag in one hand and a coffee in the other, looking as carefree as ever. "Katie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at me, her smile faltering. "What's up? We need to talk," I said firmly, gesturing for her to sit down. She hesitated, clearly sensing that something was wrong, but she sat down across from me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I know the truth," I said. "I know you're not homeless. I know you weren't evicted, and I know you still have your job." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked genuinely shocked. Then, as if on cue, she tried to play it off. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her tone defensive. "Don't lie to me, Katie," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "I saw the emails. Your lease is still active, and your boss gave you a raise. You've been lying to me this whole time." Her face flushed, and she opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The silence that followed was deafening. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I let you stay here because I thought you had nowhere else to go. I've been paying for everything while you've been living rent-free and spending your money on shopping and takeout. Do you have any idea how much this has cost me? How much stress this has put me under?" Katie finally found her voice, but her response only made things worse. "Okay, fine," she said, crossing her arms. "I didn't lose my apartment or my job, but I needed a break. Things have been really stressful for me, and I thought you'd understand. You're always talking about how much you care about your friends, so I figured you'd want to help me out." "A break?" I repeated, incredulous. "You lied to me, manipulated me, and took advantage of my kindness, all because you needed a break? Do you even hear yourself?" She rolled her eyes, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not that big of a deal, Sarah. You're acting like I committed a crime or something. I was going to move out eventually." Her lack of remorse was the final straw. I realized then and there that the person sitting in front of me wasn't the friend I thought I knew. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry she got caught. "You need to leave," I said, my voice firm. "What?" she said, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You heard me. You need to pack your things and move out. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here anymore." "You can't be serious," she said, her voice rising. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said, standing my ground. "You lied to me, you took advantage of me, and you've shown zero remorse. I'm done." Katie tried to argue, but I wasn't budging. I gave her a deadline. She had 2 days to pack up and leave. If she wasn't out by then, I'd call the police and have her removed. Those 2 days were some of the most awkward and tense of my life. Katie sulked around the apartment, barely speaking to me as she packed her things. She tried to guilt-trip me a few times, but I refused to engage. I knew I was doing the right thing, even if it hurt. When the deadline finally came, Katie left without so much as a goodbye. I felt a mix of relief and sadness as I watched her go. I had lost a friend, but I had also regained my peace of mind, and more importantly, my dignity. But the story didn't end there. After Katie left, I thought that would be the end of it. I was emotionally drained, but relieved to have my apartment and my life back to myself. I started cleaning up the mess she had left behind, both physically and emotionally. But as the days went on, I started hearing whispers from mutual friends, and the things they were saying left me absolutely furious. Apparently, Katie had been spinning a completely different version of events to anyone who would listen. She told people I had kicked her out for no reason, that I was controlling and selfish, and that I had abandoned her in her time of need. She even went so far as to say I'd made her homeless, knowing full well that she had no place to go. Hearing these lies made my blood boil. I had bent over backward to help her, only to be stabbed in the back. But it wasn't just about my reputation. Katie was painting me as a monster to cover up her own lies and manipulations. I couldn't let her get away with it. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to confront her directly, to call her out in front of everyone and make her admit the truth. But then I realized that someone who could lie so easily and shamelessly wasn't likely to come clean just because I asked her to. If anything, it would just give her more opportunities to twist the story. So instead, I decided to let the truth speak for itself. I started by gathering evidence, everything I had that could prove Katie had been lying. I saved screenshots of the emails I had found on her laptop, showing that her lease was still active and her job was intact. I also went through our text messages and found multiple instances where she contradicted herself or let slip details that didn't match her story. But the real icing on the cake came when I remembered something important. Katie had left behind a small stack of unopened mail when she moved out. Among the letters were bank statements, and while I didn't feel great about looking through them, I knew it was necessary. Sure enough, the statements showed regular payments being made to her landlord, as well as a steady income from her job. Armed with all this evidence, I decided to set the record straight. I made a post on social media, addressing the situation head-on. I didn't name Katie directly, but anyone who knew us would easily connect the dots. In the post, I explained how Katie had reached out to me, claiming to be homeless and in desperate need of help. I shared how I had taken her in, paid for everything, and given her the time and space to get back on her feet, only to discover that she had lied about everything. I included screenshots of the emails and text messages, as well as the bank statements, with sensitive information redacted, to prove my case. I ended the post with a simple statement. I believe in helping people, but I also believe in honesty and accountability. I'm sharing this because I refuse to let lies tarnish my character or my actions. I hope this serves as a reminder to always trust your instincts and to protect your boundaries, even when it's hard. The response was overwhelming. Friends and acquaintances flooded the comments with support, praising me for standing up for myself and exposing the truth. Some people admitted they had believed Katie's version of events at first, but after seeing the evidence, they realized how manipulative she had been. It wasn't long before the post got back to Katie. She tried to defend herself, claiming I had invaded her privacy and that I was blowing things out of proportion. But the damage was already done. People saw through her excuses, and her attempts to play the victim only made her look worse. Katie eventually stopped responding and deleted her own social media accounts. I don't know what happened to her after that, and honestly, I don't care. What mattered to me was that the truth was out there and that I could finally move on. This experience taught me a lot about boundaries, trust, and the importance of standing up for myself. It wasn't easy to let go of someone I once considered a close friend, but in the end, I realized that true friendship is built on honesty and mutual respect. To anyone listening who's ever been taken advantage of by someone they trusted, remember that you deserve better. Don't let guilt or manipulation keep you in a situation that doesn't feel right. Trust your instincts, set your boundaries, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had a similar experience, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming stories. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more with you soon.